how hard it is to sum up a short story collection, because most of them are, they're all over the place, and that's what they should be. They should tell you a bunch of different stories that take you in different directions and leave you with different feelings. And so I thought, well, how can I explain this book, the 10 stories of this book? And actually, another writer did it better than I could, so I'll just borrow her line. This is from an essay by the novelist and short story writer Karen E. Bender. She said this: "Writing about a person whose struggle you wish you could solve is an act of compassion and also, frankly, opportunism." When I read that sentence, it stopped me, especially that last part. It's an interesting line, and I wished I had written it. And it also made me think back over the past 6 or 7 years of writing. And to get to this first book, I actually wrote 2 books, 2 collections of stories. And one of those was my thesis when I was in the MFA program down in Mankato, and then the second one is the actual book. And in both of those things, the first one is really a learning process, I think, for a lot of writers. And then when you do it the second time around, you're a little more intentional and you have a little more control, and at least you hope that is the case. And so the second time around, I realized, though, that one thing I was doing was frequently, not always, but frequently taking scraps of real life, moments that I'd seen or heard about, and in some ways I was trying to solve problems on the page that I couldn't solve in real life. And so I started with some sad and difficult bits of history, or things I'd seen or heard about or read about in news stories, and just things from the atmosphere. And often that would be the thing that initiated the story, starting with some moment. And I thought I'd read a little piece for you tonight from a story that started with my mother-in-law. I was giving her a ride. She lives up here in the Twin Cities, and so sometimes I get dispatched up here to pick her up and drive her down to Mankato. And on those drives, I hear a great deal about her family and her family history. And she's been working for years on a genealogy. She told me this story. She knew that she had a sibling who died soon after birth, within a few hours of birth, and she knew very little about that other than the fact that it had happened. And so she was researching, and she found a record on which the doctor had described the state of the baby when she was born, and she had really profound birth defects and lived only a short time. But at the bottom of the document, the doctor had written a monstrosity. And those 2 words, of course, they were very jarring for her to see that. And then she told me that, and then I thought about that for years, of course. And then I decided to write a story about it. But it's not really about that. It starts with that moment. So the story is called Close Relations, and I'm just going to read a real short part of it for you. But it's about a 60-year-old woman who's been researching her family, and which her husband thinks is a waste of time. And so they have this kind of running argument about whether you should really just focus on living your life and moving forward, or spend this time remembering the people who came before you and recording that history. And at the same time she's doing this, she's taking care of her grandson a lot, and she's just found out that her young daughter, who's single, is now pregnant with a 2nd child. So the pressure's on her. And in this short scene, the woman, Lorraine is her name, she's out for an anniversary dinner with her husband. They're from St. Paul, so they're at Mancini's, of course. And she's speaking about her parents, who are both dead and gone by now. It's so hard to recall anything for certain, Lorraine said. I remember coming here for Dad's birthday once when the kids were getting to be bigger. I remember it clearly because my mother suggested we get a sitter, and I'd gotten hurt feelings over that. Why? Jim spoke with his cheek full of food, and he reached for another piece of bread. He ate with the speed and appetite of a farmhand, which annoyed Lorraine. Because they were good kids, she said, and I wish Mom would want them around. Jim furrowed his brow as he chewed. It's silly, Lorraine said. I know that now, but it was something that upset me at the time. My mother behaved like she wasn't much interested in the kids when they were little, when they might have wanted something from her, like a clean diaper, or a bottle of milk, or peanut butter and jelly. Come on now, Jim said. Let's not go down that old road. Let's have a nice time. The waitress came with more wine, just in time, Lorraine thought, and she took a long sip that was not at all ladylike. Her husband smiled. Easy there, he said. Lorraine laughed. I know, she said. You're right, I'll drop it. It's just that they've been on my mind, Mom and Dad. They've been on my mind a lot lately. I can tell, Jim replied. And Lorraine said, it's just that people go around like every day is merely another day. Like everything will always be the same, or maybe it'll only get easier with time. And you wake up one day and half the people in your life are gone, and you realize you hardly knew each other. That's it. Thank you.